Okay, we are unmuted. And unmuted. And here we go. Things get kind of serious after that. With the brown hair sitting by the podium. Perfect, thank you. I made the mistake to dropping into daycare to say hi to my kids today. It was just like an hour and a half of screaming after that.
I thought you were gonna say you got the flu, just like that.
Just instantly. That was last week. I was like literally sitting in the dark in the sleeping room with both of them screaming. Like, you know, the like daycare ladies are like, such a simple thing. Okay. No, just save it. Oh, it's not working for you, eh? So now this will tell us how many people are watching. So this is how many people are watching. That's the sound coming in the mic, so somebody's mic is off.
Good afternoon, everyone. The March 12th, 2024 regular council meeting is called to order at 4 o'clock. Council would like to acknowledge the Ucluelethat on whose traditional territories the District of Ucluelet operates. Audience members and delegates are advised that this proceeding is being video recorded and broadcast on YouTube and Zoom, which may store data on foreign servers. Are there any late items? Seeing none, may I have a motion to adopt the March 12th, 2024 regular council meeting agenda as presented?
So moved.
Councillor Hoare,
I'll second.
Councillor Anderson, all in favor? None opposed, that carries. There are 4 sets of minutes for adoption this afternoon. The first minutes are from the February 8th, 2024 regular committee of the whole meeting. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, may I have a motion to adopt the February 8th, 2024 regular committee of the whole minutes as presented?
So moved.
Councillor Kennington, Councillor Mafty, all in favor? None opposed, that carries. The next minutes are from the February 15th, 2024 regular council meeting. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, may I have a motion to adopt the February 15th, 2024 regular council meeting minutes as presented?
So moved.
Councillor Hoare,
I'll second.
Councillor Anderson, all in favor? None opposed, that carries. The third minutes are from the February 26, 2024 special council meeting. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, may I have a motion to adopt the February 26, 2024 special council meeting minutes as presented?
So moved.
Councillor Mafty,
Second.
Councillor Kennington. All in favor? None opposed, and that carries. The last minutes are from the February 27th, 2024 regular council meeting. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, may I have a motion to adopt the February 27th, 2024 regular council meeting minutes as presented?
So moved.
Councillor Anderson.
Second.
Whoa, a tie.
I'll second.
Councillor Mafty. All in favor? None opposed. That carries. We have 3 delegations scheduled this afternoon. Since we have 3 delegations scheduled, may I have a motion to suspend Section 18.3 of the Council Procedure Bylaw, which limits the number of delegations to 2 for the duration of this meeting to allow for the 3rd delegation.
So moved.
Councillor Hoare,
Second.
Councillor Kennington, all in favor? None opposed. That carries. The first delegation relates to District Lot 1. Lot 1 of District Lot 1. Is the delegate attending in person? Oh, excellent. The microphone is yours. You may have to turn it on, I'm not sure.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
It's going through the mic?
Feel free to hold it right up to your mouth.
I don't know. I've never done the jazz singer thing before. Hi, everybody. My name's Nigel Gray. I'm a planner with McDonald Gray Consultants. I'm going to go through this real quick so Paul Koopman, who is our architect, has a chance to show you the things that are actually interesting. But I'm going to do a quick overview on where the site is, which is right at kitty corner to where we are right now, and Lot 1, District Lot 281. So you can see there, we're kitty corner to the Kulik Community Center, right on Big Beach Park and close to Black Rock, and obviously Lot 16 is behind us, and that development's going on. Right next door is Primavera tourist accommodation site as well. So right now we have a really old zone held over from the old Weyerhaeuser days, and it calls for a neighborhood pub up to 20,000 square feet, which is crazy, with some residential over the pub. Couple problems there. Obviously, nobody wants to live over a pub. 20,000 square foot pub would look like the image you see here, which we didn't really think was the highest and best use for the site, given what we know about Yuki from past projects. So we're coming in with our vision, which is to include a pub component as well, because it's an amazing site. This pub component you'll see on the architectural renderings is based on the Fern and Cedar Brewing, which is in Qualicum Beach. So it's a real size for kind of a medium-sized pub to occur at this location. Another piece of this is we want to include 12 tourist accommodation units and basically balance that off with 12 micro-residential apartments. And these are meant to be rental apartments, and they're meant to be affordable. And they are quite small, and these would really lend themselves to employee housing. The other piece is the 5 townhomes for the owners' units. So the owners are here today, and that's Paul, Adam, and Cam. So obviously this one's close to their heart. They do intend to actually live in the townhomes when they ever retire, which may be never. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Paul.
Okay, I'm just going to take a couple minutes to sort things out. Okay, are we seeing this? Yeah, okay, great. Okay, so I'm Paul Koopman, architect at DHK, and I'm going to just show you some visuals first off, like as we're sort of seeing them, and then I'd like to move into the floor plans and the site plans, and then try to return to the visuals. So what I'm showing here is the view of the proposed project from the water, like with our backs to the water, on the pedestrian trail, and you're seeing sort of the range of homes and accommodations that we're proposing. On the right-hand side is townhouses, and then sort of right in the middle is the short-term rental apartments, and then on the far left is the proposed pub, the community pub. And what I've also shown here that should be noted is there's going to be a lot more trees that are actually in the foreground here, but they've been sort of omitted so that the architecture can be shown clearly. Okay, so this is the proposed site plan of our development, and the yellow, just to give you a sense of the colors and occupation and occupancies. So the yellow is the pub, the blue is the apartments, both short term and longer term, and then the red is the townhouses. So we really see the pub as sort of one of the marquee buildings of the proposal. So we've positioned it on the north of the site, near the intersection, near this building. I mean, it's kitty corner to us, I mean, as we speak. And it's also positioned, I think, really well to engage with the public pathway down to Big Beach. We're also proposing a pedestrian connection from the existing pathway up to the sort of the plaza level of this development and connecting up to that pub level. The second building that we're seeing is the blue, which is the short-term rentals. So we've positioned that right beside the community pub, but we think it'll have a complementary relationship with that building, in the sense that they're sort of both in the sort of tourism, or could be in the tourism type of program. And then the other blue building is our regular sort of long-term rental buildings, and those are face down on the page in the southern part of the site. And there's really no physical difference between the two buildings in terms of the units. They're both essentially studio apartment units, 300 square foot each. The only difference is how long that they would be rented for. And the rental unit that is on the south side faces a Marine Drive as opposed to the water. The red buildings are the townhouses, and those occupy, have really great views of the water. They are 3 stories, and would have a rooftop terrace. I think that's the main thing I'm going to talk about here. I'm going to just jump to the visualizations, because I think it'll give you an even better sense of the project. So this is returning to that view, and here we're sort of moving up the pathway, and you can see the other thing that I should point out is that there's a layer, the lower level that's being shown here is the parking area. So the whole ground floor of the development will be dedicated to parking. So you can see here, I'll just stop for a moment. The pathway here is connecting up to that staircase that would take you up to the plaza level of the development. I think it'd be quite a nice, quite an appealing staircase and connection to the pathway. So here you can see also the pub and the position that we've placed it in. I mean, I think it'll be a great place to sit and have a drink and a sandwich. It will have great views of the ocean, and I think it'll be quite an amenity for the community. And so here you can kind of see, looking back towards the water, and see the relationship of the pedestrian pathway to the proposed development. So just moving down Marine Drive. We imagine lots of bike parking, covered outdoor bike parking. And in a kind of architectural nod, to this building, to this very room that we're in, we're proposing an octagonal shaped building that would house the brewing features of the pub, and potentially a sort of an area to eat on the top floor of that. And then there's the townhouses with the rooftop terraces, and then here's our rental buildings facing the street. The other thing to point out is that there's a single curb cut or access into the site. So you would come down Marine Drive, down this ramp, and then you would be able to access all your parking from that place. I can share with you. How am I doing for time? Okay, I'll just keep going till I get kicked off. Okay. I'll maybe show you this one more thing. This is the rental unit that we've designed, and you can sort of see it here. It's quite small and compact, but I think you will see that it's very efficient and would be very good for a single individual or a couple to live in there. So essentially a kitchen, washroom, and then a living sleeping area. So this would be essentially a Murphy bed that would come down. I think that really concludes my presentation.
And we'll take any questions from council. This is really, we came today just because it's the only time we actually get to have a conversation before an application. So rather than come in blind, we'd love to hear any of your initial thoughts, or if we're crazy.
Could you speak into the microphone, because we have people on Zoom that won't be able to hear you.
Yeah, so this is our only opportunity to speak to council before an application, so we're just welcoming any comments you have. Tell us if we're crazy, if we're on the right track. But yeah, we've done our homework, so this is where we've arrived at after conversations with staff and the owners. So please.
Okay, any questions from council? Councillor Hoare?
I'm curious, what's the proposed square footage for the micro residential? And I guess the STRs are about the same.
They're each about 314 square feet each, and there's 24 of them. There's 12 and 12.
And the other one was there's a single curb cut, so you'd go in and you would drive past the short-term rentals to get to the pub parking?
And what's your timeline on this? What ideally, when would you like to have this completed?
We're probably 3 to 4 months away from making an application. If we get a general sense that council thinks is the right track, we'll get on it right away.
Other comments? Councillor Mafty?
I have limited experience, but a lot of the other large developments on this scale that have come before council since I've been on council have approached have approached me and other councillors sort of off the record, and I'm wondering how much input you've solicited from the community that you've incorporated into your plans.
So we haven't done that piece yet. We wanted to talk to council first. What we typically do is we would make an application and then host a public information meeting after it's gone to first reading. Every community is different, so whatever's the preferred path, we'll talk to Bruce moving forward and make that happen. On our last development here, we did do a public information meeting before coming to council, but it's my impression that council does represent the community, so talk to you first. If we get a general sense that it's okay, then we'll go out to the community with it.
I guess I'd have a few follow-up questions. I'm trying to be diplomatic. I understand that this is very early on in the process, and so I guess a few questions I have for you. Are you aware that there's already a brewery and a pub in town, and have you gotten a feel for how that businesses integrated into the community?
We're aware of Alberni Brewing, and we may approach them at some point.
I'm talking about either Ucluelet
Oh, sorry,
Brewery.
Ucluelet Brewing, but we may approach them at some point once we get to a point where we actually have something to talk about. I think when we are doing the brewery design specifically, and we get into a technical design, it'll be working with an operator at that point.
Okay. Have you gotten much feedback about how much appetite there is for short-term rentals in the community at this time?
No.
Have you gotten an impression of the general value of Big Beach to the community in terms of how members of the community like to use that space?
Definitely, and we spent a lot of time talking about that. Our company actually worked on Lot 16 just on the planning end, so we did quite a bit of public input at that time. So we do know the neighborhood quite well.
And it's your impression that the community would like to see a pub on Big Beach?
Well, the reason the pub's retained is because it is in the zone right now. Talking to Bruce, we might move that land use to commercial, so it doesn't necessarily have to be a pub, but to retain that higher use there on what is one of your major assets here in Ucluelet, I think a commercial use there does still make sense. Whether it's a pub or not is a matter for discussion.
The last thing I'll say, just in reply to your last point, I'm going to speak for myself here, but I would wholeheartedly agree with you that Big Beach is one of our community's greatest assets. But the value that I personally put on it and the value that I see Big Beach offering to our community as an asset is as a natural space that's available for people to enjoy peace and quiet and access to nature and to feeling like there's a little bit of it right here in town. So that's, but thank you for your presentation.
I was just going to follow up. So a 20,000 square foot pub would definitely not be the right use there. I mean, I guess we're coming to council for you to give us input back as well. So if you do have a use in mind, what you think would be appropriate given the context and your local experience, what is that land use in your mind?
Councillor Kennington?
I sure like a pub. Yeah, it's really close to here. It's going to be dangerous. I guess I'm just curious about when you're talking about a pub and we're sort of starting to use the word brewery. Are we talking about a brewery? Is that not an industrial use?
Breweries are typically industrial use. There are some occasions where they'll have kind of like that specialty tank in the restaurant, and with a Class D lounge license, I believe you're allowed to do that brew on site. Obviously, the site's not big enough to be a proper, full-on industrial brewery. So I don't know if you've been to, say, Longwood Station in Nanaimo. They don't actually brew there, but they do have the one tank there, and they brew a couple special brews there. And it's part of the ambiance of the pub to have that tank in the background and all those things.
Yeah, it's just, if we're talking about the kind of massing that it takes to basically have a humongous decoration, it would be much better suited to either more residential, long-term residential, or just not there at all to preserve a little bit more nature. So, having a place to go for a beer after work is fine, but that the brewery part of it is kind of questionable to me.
Thank you, that's helpful.
Councillor Hoare?
Well, since Big Beach is kind of my backyard and I walk down and hang out in the quiet a lot, I'm not saying I don't like a pub, because I do. I mean, just because my guy is now gluten-free and can't drink the beer does not mean I don't like one. But yeah, I am a big fan of the fact that Big Beach is highly accessible, like for mothers with strollers and people. Like it's one of the more accessible spots, and for people who don't have a vehicle and can't drive up to the beaches in the park. So not the hugest fan of a pub idea, but I understand the notion of keeping a little bit of something commercial. I'm just not sure what the other option would be. That's something that I would need to think about a little bit more than this. I like that there's a residential component. We do obviously need residences, so I get that I'm not a huge short-term rental fan, but I see a little bit of balance there. I kind of looked at the renderings of the pub and the walkway, and I was kind of like, oh my God, because I love that walk up by the creek, and I like to hear the water running, and and it's just, it makes me cringe a little, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, the architects don't like to show the trees, but there is actually a massive setback from that trail where we can't go anyway.
Yeah.
So all those trees will be retained, and we're landscape architects, if you don't know that already. So when it comes back, that will be obvious. So all the buffers and the tree retention and all those things. Yeah.
Yeah, and it is, because it's a riparian zone, so you have to be very careful.
Among other
and-
things.
Yeah,
There's more going on than
there's
just
a
the
whole,
riparian zone.
a whole lot of stuff
There's
going on there.
geotechnical. There's a small creek next door coming down between the path and our property as well, and a drainage outlet as well. So.
I think one way or another something's going there. So
Oh, for sure.
So as far as preserving the nature, that's not really our call here. The call is, what's going to go in that space and what impact it's going to have. So unfortunately, it's private property. So I think what this is more about is like swapping the uses or redistributing the density that's on that site for a different type of product, because that was zoned, 15, 16 years ago or whatever. So I think times have changed, so we have a different situation, and it calls for a different plan. So I think it'd be great to see what the next steps are and to see what comes to council and see what the community has to say. But generally, I'm supportive of development there, and brewery being part of it, short-term rentals being part of it, and long-term rentals being part of it. It's a good mix. It's just let's see what it gets massaged into as we move forward.
Yeah, I'm 100%. I agree. That was just me. It's my little backyard hideaway.
We don't want to do anything nobody wants to see. That's why we're here. We don't want to bring an application that's not going to succeed. So.
Yeah, this is all brand new to us as of tonight. So yeah, we'll have to sort of go away and mull it around a little bit. I don't know if you've talked to BlackRock at all about this development, but they're right next door, and they have it's a lounge, but kind of like a pub, and short-term rentals, obviously. So I don't know, it might be a neighborly thing to go have a chat with them. Councillor Anderson?
First off, I'd like to say, well, thanks for coming to us and asking in advance what you think we might be interested in. It's a tough one. I'd like to see what happens with the public open house when that comes along, because I really don't know what the folks in town would want. I know a pub is probably appealing to a bunch, but yeah, I think the idea of having the smaller residences there is a nice way to offer a rental unit to someone and to be close to the beach. I think that makes sense, and it might be an affordable option for people. And then I think the idea of being able to incorporate the build into nature as much as possible, so it's not ostentatious or anything. And it sounds like you've got a pretty neat design in that sense. I'd have to see what it looks like with the trees, obviously. But I think it checks a bunch of boxes for sure. Thanks.
Well, thank you for coming and presenting today, and we'll look forward to seeing your progress.
Just parting words. We won't talk to you if we have an active application. So if you have comments, you can send them to us or send them through Bruce before we make an application. But after that, it's all in council meetings. So.
Okay, thank you so much. Our next delegation relates to the West Coast Transit Service. Mr. Rotenberg is the delegation online?
Yeah, I think so. 1 second.
Could be.
Why don't you ask him? Yeah. No, it's Eddie. I guess it could be Danielle Seaman. I'm not sure. Oh.
It could be. He's the CAO of the ACRD.
Daniel, I'm just going to promote you right now, and then we'll make you a co-host.
I believe Eddie should be speaking to this. Is he on the list?
I'm not seeing Eddie on the list here. If you'd like, we can reschedule Eddie's presentation.
Let me just, he should be in the office beside me. Let me just, give me one instant. Yeah, if we could reschedule this discussion, that would be useful. But I do believe Terry Fong and I are here to provide a budget overview.
Yes, that was our third delegation, but we can reschedule, Eddie, no problem.
Sorry about that. Thank you.
Okay, so our last delegation this afternoon is about the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District's budget. And this would be your cue, Daniel and Terry.
I'm just going to promote Terry to co-host now, so she can share her screen if need be.
Awesome. Thank you. And I'll let Terry start, and I will fill in as appropriate.
Perfect. Thank you. And I'm just going to share my screen. I think we're up and running now.
We can see it, yes.
Perfect. Okay. It's still thinking as it gets into presenter mode here. There we go. Perfect. Oh, except you got the wrong screen. I'm just going to go back to that other version. Okay. So thank you for the invite today. I'm Terry Fong. I'm the Chief Financial Officer here at the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District, and I'm going to go through quickly our 2024 to 2028 draft financial plan. Sorry if I share it the other way, it's looking funny, so we're going to go with this version today. So I'm going to go over our financial planning process, the newly adopted 2024 to 2027 strategic plan, the components of the plan that relate to the District of Ucluelet, and then over where we're at in the process. So the ACRD, like the District of Ucluelet, does a 5-year plan. We must adopt ours by March 31st of each year, and we do have it loaded onto the financial plan page of our website if you're looking for a full detailed package. In a regional district setting, we have all of our services are deemed to be independent, so we are unable to transfer revenues or expenditures from service to service. And this allocation of services must include staff, wages, and benefits as well. So to develop the financial plan, we take the operational costs of our existing services. We are looking to implement our newly adopted 2024 to 2027 strategic plan. And then we have our asset management plans for all of our services that have infrastructure. We've been doing a lot of public consultation over the last month, presenting to City of Port Alberni Council, District of Tofino Council, yourselves today. We've held an open house, presented to some community groups. But throughout this whole thing, our email of budget@acrd.bc.ca has been available for the public to provide input. And we've reached quite a few people this year. It's been good. It's nice to get back to some pre-COVID numbers in terms of our engagement. So happy for that. I'll just quickly go through the parts of our strategic plan. So there's 4 focus areas of this strategic plan. Number 1 being planning for a resilient and livable region. And the items include enhancing indoor and outdoor recreation, sustainable land use planning and growth management, viable and responsive transportation services, supporting our volunteers, and continuing to leverage grants. And somehow I lost slide 2. Slide 2 is infrastructure and asset management, so that it continues to be a focus of ours as all municipalities in the region. Area 3 is our partnerships and communication, including some First Nation protocol agreements and optimizing our communication platforms. And finally, the regional district is a lot of advocacy as a board. So a lot of things that aren't necessarily our services, but are good for the region. So some of them are availability of health services, housing accessibility, alternative emergency routes. Those are some of the advocacy roles that our board has taken on and continue to work on. Our budget this year is approximately $29.6 million. It's similar to that of last year. The tax requisition component of the plan is about 11.9 million. This is approximately 1.2 million higher than last year. And a big reason why is the West Coast Transit Service. So that is being implemented here in 2024. Unfortunately, Eddie wasn't here today, but that accounts for about 4.96% of the increase, or $531,000. We've had some great success in grant funding for a number of our services, and we anticipate approximately $7 million worth of grant money to support our operations and our capital projects here in 2024. In terms of services, one of the services that the District of Ucluelet participates in is regional planning. So this is for all municipalities and electoral areas, and it deals with subdivision application referrals, ALC, so Agricultural Land Commission referrals. And then we are also very active in the area of agriculture, including coastal roundtable activities. So Agricultural Development Committee, and have been very great at leveraging grants to kind of have these initiatives going. So some really neat ones, including partnering with North Island College to offer a meat processing training program here at the Dock Plus in the Alberni Valley, and focusing on some agricultural water supply in the Alberni Valley as well, which is good. And the ACRD also started to look at developing a corporate climate action plan in 2023 that we will be finishing up this year to set our direction for climate initiatives moving forward. The West Coast Transit Service is going to be implemented here. I think the aim is still for April 2nd, which is coming up very quickly. They are just finishing the confirmation of stops, as well as how the tickets are going to be sold and tokens. So hopefully Eddie's able to come to your next meeting to present about that. In terms of regional parks, we completed that remaining section of the West Coast Multi-Use Path in 2023, which is great to see. We're planning on having an open house here to celebrate the success of that a little bit later this spring when the weather gets better. And also kind of looking at the log train trail here in the Alberni Valley this year. The Long Beach Airport remains very busy, and we had almost pre-COVID numbers last year, which is great to see, even with the closure of the highway, which I guess is a reason why you'd be flying in, or one of the reasons. Infrastructure upgrades continue at this site. However, very short on financing. This wartime infrastructure is expensive to replace and all near the end of its useful life, so continuing to have to prioritize for that aspect. One of the ways we're looking to do that is by the development of an airport master land use plan, including public engagement. So that's going to be a big project for us in 2024. And we're continuing discussions with the Taloquiet First Nation to partner with them, and going to sign off on a memorandum of understanding with that. In terms of solid waste, we now have that 3-stream system implemented on the West Coast. And so the focus is now turning to the update of the solid waste management plan. So I believe there was a meeting held a couple Fridays ago out there with the working group, and there'll be working group activities as well as public engagement as we develop the next diversion strategies for the area, and also a bit of a upgrade still to continue to cover at the West Coast landfill for the organics processing. Yeah, so the upgrade to the facility at the landfill is probably the other major project related to that. just going to touch briefly on the new Emergency and Disaster Management Act. So as you know, your District of Ucluelet has its own emergency program, but there is a lot of talk about the coordination, which is both legislated now as well as desired, between the different regions and the different policies and planning activities that we have going on. So our Protective Services Manager continues to work closely with your fire chief on discussing that. There is kind of a proposed service in the background that the board started a number of years ago to decide if we needed some sort of a coordination component for the West Coast, because you have many organizations with many different plans and on the peninsula, and do we want to coordinate those? But at this point, we're just going to keep that as an informal discussion for the group to work through during the year. In terms of emergency 911 telephone system, there is the new Next Gen 911 program that is mandated for 2025. So there's a lot of GIS or mapping work to be done between now and then to ensure that all of our house numbering is accurate and on a platform that the new technology can use. So the different municipalities and Treaty First Nations are discussing how we're going to approach that, and probably a program that's going to be led by the regional district to ensure that we have all that up to date in time for the legislative changes. In terms of our general government service, there's a couple of projects that are underway. There's an inclusive governance project with a grant from the province to engage First Nations in the region to develop strategies to advance their participation in the regional district boards. So these would be nations that are outside of the treaty process. We also have a grant from the province for looking at the Island Rail Corridor and the future of that, and to develop both a shared vision as well as for the short term and long term with the nations, specifically the Sashat and Hubacheset in the Alberni Valley. And then Cherry Creek Waterworks is a improvement district in the valley that is considering conversion to become a regional district service. So that is another project this year. In terms of service agreements, District of Ucluelet actually provides quite a bit of service to Long Beach through service agreements with the regional district. Many of these agreements are old, and there's a lot of discussion at staff level about updating these agreements. So just to give you an idea of the 5 that came to mind are the South Long Beach Fire Protection Agreement, the Emergency Planning Agreement, the maintenance for the section of the multi-use path, like the former part or the older part of the path, the new section of the West Coast multi-use path, and then fire protection at the Long Beach Airport. And finally, I'll just briefly touch on the Regional Hospital District. So this is a separate legal entity, but same taxpayers. And so we pay for 40% of the capital infrastructure related to hospitals in the region. To date, that's only included the West Coast General Hospital, the Bamfield Health Center, and the Tofino General Hospital. Island Health has requested funding for 40% of the capital improvements related to the Ucluelet Primary Care Center, so $2.8 million from the region, and for the Tofino Staff Housing and Sobering and Assessment Center for $1.8 million. This is kind of new territory for the board, and Island Health is actually presenting to them tomorrow morning so that we can start further discussions on those items. And I thought I would give you a snapshot. These are some very large numbers, mostly due to the increase in the West Coast Transit, or the establishment of the West Coast Transit service, but it is a 25% tax increase for District of Ucluelet, putting our requisition for the area about just shy of $1 million at $965,000. So Daniel and I are both online and happy to answer any questions that you have, and I will stop sharing.
Thanks, Terry. I feel like I've been living this budget for several weeks now.
Yes.
Any questions from staff or from council? No questions. So I'll see you tomorrow morning at the hospital meeting.
Thank you.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
presenting. Bye. Is there any unfinished business? 7.1, zoning amendment for 1626 Larch Road is the only bylaw item on the agenda this afternoon. And I believe this will be Mr. Gregg.
Thank you. And it occurs to me I can certainly bring up the site plan on the screen, but it is in your agenda package. So this is a zoning amendment. This is the first piece of two for 1626 Larch Road that's on the agenda. And so the zoning amendment bylaw, this is an application from the Mills family to do an addition and expansion of their house to serve their family needs and to add a secondary suite. And so the property is located at the corner of Larch and Holly, and essentially the increase or the change that of the size of the house would trigger a change. Essentially, before they get a building permit, they would need to amend the zoning. And so the zoning bylaw is fairly straightforward. It would bump the floor area ratio that's in their current zoning in the R1 zone from 0.35 to 0.42. And it would also increase the lot coverage from 35% to 44%. As I said, I can pull up a site plan and sort of show a picture of it, but it is in your agenda as well. So other than that, I just see if there's any questions from council. And I should note, because this is still kind of new territory, it's a zoning amendment for residential use. So this is where the holding of a public hearing is not an option anymore. So that's why it's a little different, where the motions are really, potentially council could give all readings and adopt the bylaw at this point in time.
Great, thank you, Mr. Gregg. I think we all know this property well for the Christmas lights that they put
It's
up.
hard to miss.
Questions from council?
I feel like that second floor is going to give Sean more scope for lights.
That's right.
There is a second story
second
component to a portion of the building, and yes, and I can certainly show. There is a second piece, which is an application for. There's some variances involved as well. That's later in the agenda as well.
Okay, I don't see any questions from council.
Thank you.
There are two recommended motions, and I believe they should be moved separately, correct? Yes. All right, who would like to take this on?
I'll do it. I will move that council give first, second, and third reading of the Ucluelet zoning amendment bylaw number 132, 2024.
I think it's
Sorry. I will move that council give first, second, and third reading of Ucluelet zoning amendment bylaw number 1332, 2024.
I'll second.
Councillor Hoare seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor? None opposed? That carries.
And I will move that council adopt zoning amendment bylaw number 1332, 2024.
I'll second that.
Councillor Anderson seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor? None opposed? That carries.
I'm going to recuse myself for the next item because I have a conflict of interest as ED of one of the societies that's applied.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Mafty. We have 4 report items. The first item is 8.1, 2024 Grant in Aid and In-Kind Contribution Award, and the Director of Community Services will present this report. Whoa. And I like your new title, Miss Fortune.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Before you have a report regarding the 2024 Grants in Aid and In-Kind Contribution Awards, with a recommendation that Council approve the Grants in Aid contribution for 2024 as presented in Appendix B. Just a little bit of background. The District of Ucluelet provides grants and aids to assist community groups, not-for-profit societies, and organizations with specific projects. Council also provides in-kind contributions towards rentals and lease of facilities owned by the district. At the February 28th Council of the Whole, organizations presented their requests to Council. From there, Council members then individually considered all of the requests and provided staff with individual allocations of the available funds. These allocations were combined and then averaged to provide the total suggested allocations as presented in Appendix B, which I will attempt.
So I've got to promote you to panelist, and then you've got to accept that promotion. And then we'll promote you to co-host, and then you can share your page.
Joy, am I waiting for something?
No, you just have to share your page.
Oh, here we go. There we go. Sorry. Okay, so just to walk you through this, you'll see the 2024 recommended amounts. And if council's good with that, we can just go with that and move on. Or if there's some adjustments that you would like to make, I can make them live. So Mayor, at this point in time, I think I'll hand it back to you for see where the council would like to go with this.
I don't think you're speaking into the mic.
Sorry.
There.
My apologies. So before you, you have the 2024 recommendations that came out of from input from the council, and that was averaged out over the 21,647 that is budgeted for 2024. And so if council's comfortable with the recommendations that are there, we can move forward, or if council would like to make adjustments, we can do them on the fly as well.
Can I just ask how the total recommended amount is 21,647? How did that come to be?
Good question.
It's just such an unusual, I like round numbers myself.
Fair enough. I think what it came out of is when it was budgeted for, there was a 2% or 4% increase every year. And so it was based probably originally on 20,000 and then just bumped up accordingly over the years.
That makes sense. Thanks for explaining that.
You're welcome. And as you can see, the one I would like to point out is the Q Sports and Racquet Club was no longer eligible, if there was any questions on that one, but the rest are eligible.
And that was the pickleball tournament?
That is correct, which the Recreation Department will be running.
So we don't need to grant them any money for that?
That's
then.
correct.
Any questions from council?
I've got some comments.
Okay, Councillor Hoare.
I'm going to play devil's advocate a little bit here. One of the things that's in the grants and aid and was in Ms. Fortune's presentation is that this is grants and aid is meant for specific projects, not to be basically a line item in a group's budget year over year. And so while there are groups that apply every year, as Surfrider does, this one is for, you know, a water filling station, like it's a specific project. And my issue lies with Raincoast Education. I love what they do. Don't get me wrong. I'm a huge advocate of education, particularly I'm a field biologist, so field education is, as far as I'm concerned, amazing. But year over year, they've asked for money and they've increased the ask. And that's the other thing that we've asked in grants and aid is for nonprofits to be decreasing asks if possible, so that we can spread it out amongst other groups. So I look at the recommended allocations, and the brand new group up there is Coastal Queer Alliance, who is doing some amazing queer youth work. And, you know, it's only half of what they asked for. And I'm kind of like, so I had granted them a lot more than that personally. And the other thing, Raincoast Education used to ask for half that, and they would get about half of their ask. And then suddenly they doubled their ask, and they were still getting half their ask. And when you look at what they presented, which was not a full budget, it's for salaries. And I get that they're having trouble getting salaries paid, and I understand people need to be paid properly and people need to be able to live out here. So this is why I'm playing devil's advocate. I'm saying this because I don't disagree with what they do. I don't disagree that they need money, but I'm like, I want to know, and they couldn't answer, why SD 70 is not supporting a field trip that is done during school hours. They have money in their budget for field trips. I don't know why that is not being accessed. And we've asked them for multiple years about that.
I was just going to say, we ask every year
Yeah.
why that is.
And every year we get I don't know.
So just to be clear what the process was here, all 5 of us took this form. 4?
For
Oh,
All 4 of you.
4.
Yes.
Councillor Mafty recused himself.
That's correct.
Okay, so the 4 of us took this form with the requests and made recommendations as to how much we thought each society should get. And then, Ms. Fortune, you averaged those out.
That is correct, Mayor.
And so that's how these numbers came to be.
That is correct. And through the mayor, I would add, if you want to adjust them, we can do that on the fly as well. That's why we've got an empty column right now. Totally up to you. If we do that, then we would have to find the numbers that work for council. And then Joy and I would put together a new set of recommendations. Correct, Joy? Mr. Ronberg, sorry.
Yeah, so the way that the recommendations are drafted is that you would amend, if you want new numbers, we need a series of resolutions to amend the table.
So I'm thinking your comments are just comments, not necessarily...
their comments. I disagree with granting Raincoast Education 3/4 of their ask at the expense of some of the other newer groups, because I feel they're here every year, hat in hand, asking for us to pay their salaries, a chunk of their salaries, and I get it's not all of it and all of that, and I know it's hard. That's just me. So
Do we need to look at the whole program and make a change as far as how many times you can actually apply for this over 10 years or something to prevent that every year and to...
I mean, part of it is that we
people
have
off
a
of it.
small amount of money, right? And I really hate to see some of the newer groups or the smaller groups not having what they need to really, that seed money to get going with projects. And I mean, I take the Coastal Queer Alliance because they're the brand new one on the board, right? And they're trying to expand into the First Nations, so that they're presenting at Tyastanas as well as in Ucluelet and Tofino. I think what they're doing is really great. And I'm not saying they won't be able to do it with half the amount. That's just kind of the big change that is the easy one for me to see.
And this discussion takes place at the ACRD as well, just so you know. This is not just us. They have, 67 different societies approach them for money.
Mm-hmm.
And the same discussion, do they fund the same groups over and over every year, or is it meant to get them sort of on the right track in order to find their own funding and continue their projects after the fact, after being funded? So maybe an alternative to changing numbers on the fly right now is just when the letters go out to these groups with the here's what we're giving you type letter, maybe it could be reiterated at that point that multiple asks every year are not particularly encouraged unless it's for a new specific project, kind of like what PRAS does.
So through the mayor, through the mayor, one of the things we're looking at doing is looking at the grants and aid. This is my first year with this project, and one of the things I'm going to be doing is assessing what our bylaw looks like, policy. Our policy looks like, and then I'll get some information back to council. I think we can certainly address some of the issues that are coming up. I know I have little concerns here and there where the gray is and where the gray isn't. And I think we can maybe come up with something a little bit more solid if council would like to move forward on something along that lines.
I think that would be a great idea.
That'd be great. It's one of the reasons why I've been advocating to get some, another pot of money, like an endowment or something, into it so that we have more money to give, because
Yeah.
it's not very much, and we have to spread it pretty thin when there are a whole lot of asks. So
Through the mayor, I will say that we're not that far out of whack in terms of what was actually requested. We're $5,600. That was the difference for actual funds.
Yeah, so if everyone's okay with accepting these numbers for this year and then having staff come back to us with possibly a revised policy, does that work for council?
I'd definitely like to see a revised policy.
And maybe a I don't know how if we can interface with SD70 about like that program's great that they have.
Oh,
for
I
the
mean,
kids.
believe me, I fully support the
No,
program and the whole idea. It's just really, it's why I feel so horrible playing devil's advocate this way. It's just my feeling about the amount of funds we have to
I
give.
totally hear. It's a bit of for grant and aid, it doesn't make a ton of sense. But going forward, I wonder if there's a way that we can interface with SD70 because they're the beneficiaries in many ways of what's happening here. So I'm not sure how that happens. Or your experience on the ACRD, does the ACRD have any situation that's similar to this where the SD70 funds a school program? I know that's a wild.
No, nothing like that.
Yeah, I'm not sure how to go about that because I'd hate to see that dissolved. Like it
Oh.
would just be awful.
100%. I don't want to see it disappear. I hate being that person. I mean, the other thing is that when they doubled their ask, I don't remember seeing any change other than that their salaries had gone up. Like we haven't seen that breakdown in budget. I'm totally like, okay, well, we're doing this new program and we're going here. I would totally support that. It's just that the only thing is salaries year over year.
Right.
That we've seen. And I get that part of that is because Mark sits on council, has to recuse himself and can't be the one presenting, and he's the one who knows all the stuff.
And
So.
their AGM, I think, is coming up too.
Yeah.
There's a message about that. Or do we have any official meeting with SD70 coming up at all? Like we did last year. We had that at BlackRock. We had a meeting with them.
I'll look to Mr. Lawrence for that.
Nothing that is on the agenda at this point in time, although if council wants staff to organize a meeting with SD70, we can definitely reach out to them and see if they're available for a meeting in the future.
That would be great.
Sure.
Okay, so we're good, Miss Fortune?
Actually, through the mayor, if council could please also look at what's in front of you is the in-kind contributions as well. So these were the in-kind contributions request. We're actually under 1,600. So that's the in-kind contributions and the recommendations that came back.
Great, so pretty much everybody got what they asked for, except
That's
for one,
correct.
it looks like, yeah. Yeah.
That's correct.
Council's good with that? Okay. There is a recommendation.
Sorry, Mayor.
You're frowning.
Yes?
Just through the mayor, I might have made a mistake. There should be, shoot, my apologies. There should be 20. Just looking at the Pacific Rim Development Corporation with the $25.
Yeah, that was the only one that didn't get put forward.
The request is 500, if I remember.
Oh, that's for the other.
This is for in-kind.
Yeah, this is for in-kind. Yeah. So you're saying that the 25 should have been recommended?
Can you give me just a second, please?
Sure. I think the ask was for refreshments at their open house.
Thank you very much. That's exactly what it was, and there was no takers on that. So
Right. Yeah, I remember
thank
that.
you. Sorry,
Yeah,
my
no problem.
apologies.
Yeah, I think the in-kind was for the room and the ask, and the other one was for the
Refreshments.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yes, my apologies. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay, so there is a recommendation if somebody would like to move that.
I'll do that. I'll move the council to approve the grants in aid and in-kind contributions for 2024 as presented in Appendix B, Schedule of 2024 grants in aid and council contribution requests attached to staff report number 24-21.
Second.
Councillor Kennington seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor? None opposed? That carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Could someone let Councillor Mafty back in? Welcome back. The next report item is 8.2, development variance permit for 1626 Larch Road. After this report is presented by the Director of Community Planning, the applicant will have an opportunity to speak, and then members of the public. Welcome back, Mr. Gray.
There we are. Thank you. I think, Mr. Rotenberg, if I could be, I think I need to be turned into a panelist in order to share my screen here. That's right. We need to enable screen sharing. Okay, through the mayor, we're back at 1626 Larch Road and the Mills family home, and this is the development variance permit application piece, which is separate on the agenda. And in the past, and just as a note of process here, is we're adopting and changing where rezoning applications or zoning amendments would have had a public hearing, and we would have handled the input on the variance at the same time. We have to kind of separate them here, so we're finding a new way forward. Briefly, as part of their proposed renovation, there'd be a number of variances, so that the requested development variance permit would basically reduce the front yard setback from 25 feet to 23.5 feet. The rear yard setback, they would be reduced from a minimum of 20 feet to 5 feet. The exterior side yard setback would go from 16.5 feet to 11.5 feet, and the height of the new addition portion of the house would be increasing the maximum from 28 feet to 30 feet, so an addition of 2 feet. So this is the site plan. At the top of the screen would be Larch Road. On the far right side is Holly Crescent. And so the green is essentially this is a bit simplified, but an illustration of the footprint of the existing houses in green. So they're adding a bit in yellow towards Larch Road, and then sort of to the left-hand side of the screen, a two-story addition. And so the upper story is the detached piece off to the left, shown here essentially on the neighbor's yard. But what's labeled here, so that'd be stacked on top. What's labeled here, because it is a corner lot, and I just wanted to clarify what is front, rear, and side, is that the way the zoning bylaw is written is that when you have a corner lot or any property that has frontage on two roads, the narrowest frontage is the front. And whereas this house, its front door is on Larch, the front by the zoning is towards Holly. So the rear is off to the far left there. So that rear yard setback is more like a side setback, as this illustration in the staff report sort of illustrates. From Larch Road, the houses are more facing, on Larch and the side of the sort of indicated by the red lines there. And so the addition is highlighted in yellow. It's more like a side in terms of how the neighboring houses are. So we just wanted to make sure that was clear. Are there any questions from council? And if not, this is a development variance permit. Notice has been given, and so an opportunity for public input would be sort of the appropriate next step.
So the neighbors have been advised, is what you're saying?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. Councillor Anderson?
I've just got a quick question. I didn't. I think I'd read that it's the narrowest, so it goes on the frontage when deciding what's front and back. Is that so? The narrow side, so that makes it the front of the house that's on Holly, right? That's what you said.
Exactly. The front yard, in terms of how the bylaw works and what the setbacks are, is when you have more than one frontage. Your typical rectangular lot that has frontage only in one frontage connection to the public street is only one of the lot lines, and that would be the front. It's when you get into a corner lot, which side, you have two sides there, which side is the front, it's the narrower of the two essentially. And then so the longer side facing a public street would be the side yard exterior, which has a slightly, or has a larger setback typically than a side interior where it's adjoining a neighboring property.
Right. I didn't know that. What happens if it's a square?
Sorry.
Or a triangle. It can, it can get interesting.
Sausages.
Yes.
Can you?
Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Hoare.
Can you pull up the side yard comparison image again? Yeah, no, the other one, that shows all of them along. So this is a case, I'm just thinking that narrowest is the frontage, also applies to the one on the other corner of Holly and Larch, because the narrowest is on Holly, but the front door is on, or the narrowest is on Larch, but the front door is on Holly Crescent. And I know this because of the numbering of that house.
And through the mayor, numbering is also sort of an independent thing, and often is more related to, at the time, if there's a vacant lot, never had a house on it, and they're going to place a house and it's on a corner, they may choose and have a discussion. Do we number the house on street A or street B, and where's the front door going to be? And that could be the decision of how it's assigned at that time. But really, where the front door is located has nothing to do with how the zoning bylaw describes or defines the setback of where the building is supposed to be. So essentially, their house, if you're viewing the house from Larch, this property and the neighboring properties all have their front doors facing the street, and that where the addition is being proposed is technically in the rear yard, but its distance from the property line would be more like their neighbors, where there's currently there's a larger vacant space there because it's the rear yard, but it's like a wide side yard in some ways. I hope I'm not confusing things.
No, I suddenly understand why the numbering, why that is, the other one is considered to be Larch Road, but Sean gets their stuff delivered all the time because they have the same house number but two different streets.
Any other questions from council? Would the applicant like to address council? Is Mr. Mills on Zoom? Mr. Rotenberg?
Please click the raise your hand icon if you'd like to speak, Mr. Mills, or *9. I'll iterate again. Please click the raise your hand icon if the applicant would like to speak. There are no hands raised at this time.
Okay. Are there any members of the public attending in person that would like to provide input on Development Variance Permit 24-01, which relates to the property at 1626 Larch Road? No. Are there any members of the public attending via Zoom or telephone that would like to provide input on this Development Variance Permit?
Members of the public, if you're attending via Zoom or phone, by Zoom, click the raise your hand icon. By phone, click *9 to indicate that you would like to speak. There are no hands raised at this time.
And are there any unpublished correspondence on Development Variance Permit 24-01?
Just updating my folder. No.
All right, there is a staff recommendation. Who would like to take this one?
I've got it. I will move that council authorize the Director of Community Planning to execute and issue development variance permit 24-01.
I'll second that.
Councillor Kennington seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor? None opposed? That carries. Great. The next report item is 8.3 Development Permit 1671 Cedar Road, Whiskey Landing Phase 2. This report will also be presented by the Director of Community Planning. And after the Director presents, the applicant or their agent will have an opportunity to address Council. Mr. Gregg.
Thank you, and through the Mayor. This report is on a development permit and variances for the property at 1671 Cedar Road, which is sort of referred to as the second phase or the neighboring development related to Whiskey Landing. The report presents three things. It's a little unusual. It really does have sections on discussion of the development permit and the variances, as you'll have seen. But also at the forefront, staff note that the application is not complete because without a certificate, release, or other determination from the Ministry of the Environment with respect to the contaminated sites regulation. Which is why we essentially have to recommend to council that essentially under the Waste Management Act and the Contaminated Sites Regulation, without those things in place, council should not be issuing permits such as a development permit or variances or a building permit. So the applicant has been made aware of that, but they wish to have council, they disagree with some of our conclusions, both in terms of land uses as well as the process around the certificate of compliance. There was a certificate of compliance issued in 2002 for the property. It's a former bulk fuel storage site, and then at the time prior to the first phase of Whiskey Landing being developed, a certificate of compliance was obtained for commercial purposes. And essentially what it comes down to is that what's being proposed is a building that, in our read of the Contaminated Sites Regulation, their definition of land uses, which are quoted in the report, this is not a commercial development under the provincial definitions. It is a residential, in fact, a higher density residential development. And so it would need a certificate for that use as is defined by the province. And that there was some misunderstanding on the developer's side, where formerly the process with the province is that their site disclosure statement would be sent to the province, and the province would then look at it, and then they would essentially communicate with the landowner saying your site is good to go or frozen and you need to do these next steps. And that's changed somewhat, and the municipality is really now in the role of having to determine, is their certificate of compliance valid? And because of the definitions, we can't say that this is a commercial use that meets that definition. So no, it is not matching the use that they're proposing. And so then they need either an updated certificate of compliance or some kind of release from the province. So that's where it stands. And I think rather than getting into certainly there's still the development permit and the variance, the report in a nutshell. I mean, it's an interesting site. It has a lot of aspects to it. Overall, the form and character of the building, and they've come up with a creative design. There are a number of variances to height and some of the setbacks. Are generally supportable, subject to public input, but really that we have to recommend that those permits can't be issued yet until the applicant takes the steps to provide the pieces to sort of free up the municipal process. So maybe rather than going into the details of the development permit and the variances, I'll see if there's any questions from council, because this report is essentially more about the process and how we've come to this point.
Thank you, Mr. Gregg. Any comments from council?
I have a question, I guess, and just to clarify.
Councillor Kennington?
In order for this to be a mixed-use commercial development, so currently they're proposing basically residential style units, and they want to allocate a certain number of those to vacation rental. Is that correct?
Yes, the zoning allows for both There is an aspect. This is a comprehensive development zone, which basically was created for Whiskey Landing. There's a limitation on the number of units that could be used for hotel or resort condo type uses, and essentially with the size of the site, which is now a sort of a fee simple separate parcel from the first phase, they could have a maximum of 8 vacation short-term, rental accommodation type units. Those so that's out of a total of 23 units. But those would also be fall under the definition, has nothing to do with zoning. It's those provincial definitions of land uses within the Contaminated Sites Regulation and the Waste Management Act, that it talks about a residential use could be permanent, temporary, short-term. Like it really is any residential housing people in a building. All falls under the residential use, and then because of the size and the number of stories, this qualifies as a higher density. And there's the different uses, as we understand, and I'm not an environmental expert, but under the Waste Management Act, they just have different standards, and it's based on risk. Where industrial or commercial would have a different standard of high density or single family. Those sort of broad categories. I believe there's 8 of them, have different sort of standards that the province has set.
So under our zoning, what would it take to trigger that as a commercial building? Let's say, because I know that these are all intended to be owner purchaser with the option to rent out their units when they want to short term. If let's say the whole second floor was a hotel, would that qualify under the ministry's? And I'm not making suggestions for the developer to propose that. I'm just trying to wrap my head around what constitutes in our zoning a commercial use with sort of the same layout that we're looking at here.
And through the mayor, I'd say that it's the Contaminated Sites Regulation and the Certificate of Compliance really has nothing to do with our zoning. It's defined in the provincial legislation and act, and so there may be some similar terms, but they have different application here. So in the definition that the province uses for these purposes differentiates the commercial land use, means the use of land for the primary purpose of buying, selling, or trading of merchandise or services, including without limitation shopping malls, office complexes, restaurants, hotels, motels, grocery stores, automobile service stations, petroleum distribution operations, dry cleaning operations, municipal yards, warehouses, law courts, museums, churches, golf courses, government offices, air and sea terminals, bus and railway stations, and storage associated with those uses. So that gives, I think, a sense of what is the sort of the commercial use. What is what's shown, residential use means the use of land for the primary purpose of a residence by persons on a permanent, temporary, or seasonal basis. And so including without limitations, single-family dwellings, cabins, apartments, condominiums, or townhouses. And then high-density residential use is, multiple dwelling unit of 3 or more stories, or an institutional facility that's similar. So what they're showing is and I believe the site plan, the ground floor of the building is residential parking, residential storage, and the entrance into the residences. There's no commercial use meeting any of those definitions. It's in their plans. So that really, it's what we've communicated with the applicant is it appears that we need to see something from the province that is saying, okay, this 2002 certificate of compliance for commercial purposes, is it good enough? Do they need a new certificate of compliance, some release from the province? Essentially, the municipality's hands are tied in terms of giving development approvals on the site until we see that.
That certainly clarifies things for me anyway. Having those definitions, if it doesn't meet those definitions in the according to the province, that would override any kind of zoning we have because it's for the certificate of compliance, not our zoning.
Through the mayor, yes, our zoning really has nothing to do with it. It's defining land uses that may have an associated risk with people interacting with the soil and what might be in it. As I understand, one of the highest standard would be like single family residential, where people have gardens where you grow a tomato or your kids play in the soil. so they have a higher standard because there's a higher risk. And so something like an industrial site would have probably the lowest level or lowest standard because the activities there's expectation that this isn't, kids playing in the soil or growing tomatoes, to use a simple example, on an industrial site, say. So those land uses, they've kind of sliced into categories of how people interact with the site.
So all they would need to do is get confirmation from the province that either what they're proposing fits into their definition of commercial, or they need to get a new certificate of compliance to match what they're proposing. So those are just the two routes they can take.
That's what we've asked them for in order to make this application complete to be able to move it forward.
Okay. And I agree, the building's attractive. Everything seems to be the only thing that's holding it up, and it's basically a bit of a technicality. So hopefully it can just move forward and get the information to us.
Is it possible the applicant is mixing up what the zoning is compared to what the use is?
Entirely. It's entirely possible.
Because the zoning says mixed commercial/residential, similar to phase 1, but there is no commercial component of phase 2.
Through the mayor, yes. And so on page 127 of the agenda is a copy of a letter that we provided to the developer, and essentially trying to lay out how we have come to this determination of saying, well, here's what the provincial acts say, and so that there definitely from the developer seems to be a disagreement of their understanding, essentially taking the approach of, well, we already have a certificate of compliance from 2002, so we should be good to go. Plus there's some debate. They think their zoning allows them to do short-term rentals on all of their units, and we've got a legal opinion to clarify, and no is the answer, that the zoning does limit the number of those units to, on this site, it would work out to, it's one per 140 square meters of site area, I think. And so it works out to a maximum of 8. So here we are. Essentially, we've provided that. They haven't answered with any kind of certification from the province that would clarify that. So for our purposes, the application, we believe, is incomplete and on hold. However, they have requested, because they disagree with staff, they've requested that council see the development permit and variances and have it on your desk.
And so the latest letter from this morning from the owner says that they have requested clarification from the province on how the regulation should be applied to this project, and expect that ministry representatives will contact the district in response to this request. But has the ministry not downloaded that responsibility to the municipalities to determine the use?
So, yes. And so here we are. And so there's obviously disagreement because they've provided, they went to an environmental consultant who provided a report saying, you've got it wrong, you should be good to go, effectively. I'm being a bit facetious, but that's Appendix B in your report. That's quite contrary to the definitions and how we see how the regulation plays out, and also is contrary to the information that the Ministry of Environment provides for how municipalities should be handling these applications. So we have reached out to the province to say, and provided both our letter to the applicant and the letter, the review from Associated Engineering, and said, please let us know if you think we've got this wrong. We want to improve our understanding of these processes, but as we've done our best to understand the regulations, and you know, if they either want to confirm our process or suggest how we should be looking at it differently, that would be fabulous. But we haven't had a response, and it appears that the applicant has reached out to do the same thing.
And so is there any point in prolonging this to hear from the ministry? Because isn't the ministry just going to tell us it's our call?
I don't know.
Rhetorical question, sorry. Councillor Anderson?
But the excuse me, the province could give them the release though? I am definitely confused. I've read this a couple of times, and I'm still and as two questions. One, would they possibly be released from it? Could the province do that, or is that us?
So through the mayor, that would not be us. The process would be, as we've suggested to them, is they need to seek some kind of approval from the province to show that, oh, this is good to go. And so that can be I think there's a process for applying for a release of a site or for a determination, or they have different terminology. But essentially, the owner needs to make an application, I believe, to the province to say, here's why we think this site should be okay, and that we need some confirmation directly from the province on that to enable council to approve permits. And so that's what we've suggested to them. And so the question is then, okay, well, if that is supported as the path forward, it would essentially put this application on hold while they do that. And as we highlight, okay, there is a timeline within our development procedures bylaw. This applicant has been at this for a while. We have had numerous discussions and spent a lot of staff time on trying to answer their questions, and we sort of come to this impasse of, well, they want to just get it in front of council anyways. So it absolutely is. It could be on hold. They could get a release, and then it comes back and moves forward. Alternatively, as we lay out some of the options, the alternative would be to reject the application and encourage them to come back with a complete application. That was an opportunity. They had an opportunity to apply with a complete application in the first place.
Thank you. The other quick question I had was, I think you already answered this in the first part, but if it was to be the same as in use as phase one with the mixed commercial, I mean, I know this is like semantics at this point, but if it did have commercial on the bottom, we see it at phase one, nothing changes in this case.
So I think it depends on the amount of commercial and the location of the commercial. And in this case, what we've looked at is what are they proposing, which is a residential building on a site that has a certificate of compliance for non-residential uses, but for commercial uses. And so we can't really connect the dots on that. They may have different ways of approaching it. If they were to go, that's an option for them, is to redesign their development. But what they've asked for is this, 23 unit development, which, as we see, needs a residential release from the province.
Right. I was just trying to get my head around the idea that if the first floor was commercial, in that case, and I was looking at the provincial guidelines that they set out, trying to figure that out, and it wasn't super clear to me.
The first floor is parking.
Through the mayor, the lower level is parking. They need parking on site for the proposed uses, and certainly, but that depends also on the amount of development and the number of units. And the other thing I would just point out that the site is next to the ocean, and they have flood construction levels, and so that first floor, that parking garage, is going to have to be designed so that things like electrical needs to be up into the upper parts. There can't be equipment or things that are could be damaged or subject to flooding, because the flood construction level would be within that parking garage. So converting to something like ground floor commercial becomes a bit of a challenge. Again, there's different ways of approaching things. That could be a change in the grading. There could be all kinds of ways that go at it. We have to essentially review and respond to what the applicant comes forward, and they were aware of all these challenges, and that's why the ground level is a parking garage, and where there's some sort of open screen lattice pieces towards the ocean side. I think it's because of some of the loading, if it were to flood, to essentially allow the water to go through rather than adding pressure on the parking garage. So there's a lot of pieces at play there.
And there's a storm drainage runoff right through that property.
There is a large pipe that runs right through the middle of where the building would be constructed, and so that. See, originally this was going to be a two-phase development. It was going to become all part of one larger strata. The first phase was built, and it's stopped, and they've severed off the what was to be the second phase. So it's a separate parcel. But that storm drain takes all the stormwater off of Cedar Road and really from Peninsula, the drainage that comes down through the parking lot on Cedar Road and makes its way down through the site, is in a large pipe that's going to they need to address it. At the time I believe in the application they include the staff report from 2004, I believe, when the first phase was being approved, that talks about that storm drain. Says, oh well, with the second phase, a statutory right of way will be registered over that storm drain. So the second phase hasn't proceeded, so now we have this pipe in the ground that's going to have to be resolved as part of this development, because I think the function of where is it located needs to shift so it's not underneath the building, and then have a right of way to allow for the maintenance of it.
Oh, thank you.
I'm pretty sure the applicant was unable to attend this evening, but Mr. Rodenberg, can you just check online to see if Ewan Stewart is on Zoom?
I don't see anyone named Ewan Stewart, but just in case, I'll just say, if the applicant would like to speak, please click the raise hand icon at this time. I don't see any hands raised at this time.
Okay. I know that staff would like a sort of a conclusion to this this issue, and there is a recommendation. However, I wonder about the last part of the recommendation that stipulates 9.1 of the Ucluelet Development Application Procedures Bylaw states every application that has outstanding information requirements for a period greater than 9 months is deemed to have been abandoned with fees forfeited. I don't think this project has been abandoned, and I wouldn't like to see their fees forfeited. Is there a way of making this recommendation that that doesn't include that portion?
Through the mayor, that is what the bylaw says. I mean, I was essentially being sort of noting that. So I'm not sure if that would be a matter of. I think council could entertain an application that does not comply with that bylaw.
So it would be.
We just wanted to highlight that if the applicant does go back to seek a certificate of compliance from the ministry, that can take some time, and that at some point in time, I mean, whether it takes months or years, it would be essentially an open file. If you will.
So would that require a second motion then to not assume that the project has been abandoned and forfeit their fees?
That, through the mayor, that may be something to consider in the future if at the time the applicant were, that time period had passed and the applicant were wishing to bring forward, their and reinvigorate their application or have the materials, depending on their time, it may not be necessary, but that's something they could approach council with at that point in time, I think.
I thought it had been 9 months already, though, no?
If I may, Mayor, so the resolution before council is a motion to defer issuing the permit. So it's not acting on the 9 months. It's just saying we're going to defer this until the application's complete, but it is referring to the bylaw saying, hey, there is a time limit. It is 9 months. So it's just recognizing that for the future.
I understand. Thank you. Does council want to make a recommendation? We can defer it to a future meeting, but I don't think 2 more weeks is going to make. I don't think 2 more weeks is going to make a difference.
I think the applicant, their representative, is dealing with an issue outside of this. And they haven't spoken because of that. So defer the deferment until we can defer it.
So a motion to defer making a resolution.
Well, I think we can defer this. I think we can just make this recommendation, don't you? It doesn't materially change anything.
Correct.
This just pushes this out, essentially, right?
Yeah.
So, and then that, ideally, we get to hear back from the province on this as well, and the Ministry of Environment, if I'm correct on that.
If I may, Madam Mayor, What this would do is advise the applicant that they need to address the certificate of compliance, and that this would be an indication of council supporting staff's interpretation of the certificate of compliance in relationship to the definitions as presented in or as outlined in the contaminated sites regulation. And that would give sort of conclusion to the debate that we continually find ourselves in of whether it's zoning or commercial. Is it commercial? Is it not commercial? So what staff is asking and the applicant has asked for is staff interpreting this correctly? Yes or no? If we have incorrectly interpreted the act and applied that to the certificate, then council should consider alternate direction to staff. If council, with respect to this report and after reading the certificate of compliance and the definitions outlined within the regulation, agree with staff's interpretation and of the process that we're presenting, then this would provide clear direction to the applicant of what their next steps would be so that they can move forward. By deferring for deferral to another meeting to hear from the applicant, that is a good process so that they have an opportunity to address council, but I don't believe it will change the facts as staff has laid them out and of what we've been dealing with over the last many months. So from staff's perspective, a resolution to this and direction from council would be beneficial for both staff and for the applicant to move forward.
And of the three options, definitely the recommended one is the better of the three.
Staff would support that one. We think it's the most fair for the applicant. We don't want them to abandon their their application, but we do need a resolution.
Okay. Councillor Kennington?
I guess I just want to see proof from the ministry, because any of this is just interpretation rather than the word of the ministry, which trumps all, and we don't have that. They're saying that it exists, but we haven't seen it. It would seem to be a very simple, if not time-consuming process, but they hold the cards, and I would like to see their interpretation, not mine, or if we're unclear, if staff is unclear and the applicant's unclear, and we're, the only thing that will put this to bed is the ministry's sign-off, then they need to pursue it, we need to pursue it, we need to find out what the ministry's take is on it, and then we can stop just running around in circles.
I agree. Yeah, I agree.
So, having said that, which one of these recommendations would fit that description?
The first one,
okay.
Yeah.
So I'll make that motion if nobody wants to do it. So I'll move that council defer a decision on issuing permits for the proposed development at 1671 Cedar Road until the applicant provides a valid certificate of compliance for the proposed multifamily use of the site or other form of determination or release from the Ministry of the Environment. And a landscape plan noting that under section 9.1 of the Ucluelet Development Application Procedures Bylaw, quote, every application that has outstanding information requirements for a period greater than 9 months is deemed to have been abandoned with fees forfeited.
Do I have a seconder?
I'll second.
Councillor Hoare. Any further discussion? Councillor Mafty?
This seems like a truly trivial detail, but under the circumstances, it may be wise to correct the typo in the last sentence so that it actually says 9 rather than none.
None.
It's already been correct.
That is a
Seems
good
like
catch.
a real gotcha.
Yeah. None months. Any further discussion? All in favor? None opposed? That carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Craig. The final report item is 8.4 Finance Officer Appointment. This report item will be presented by our Chief Administrative Officer, Mr. Lawrence.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is a very short report for staff. We have successfully recruited and hired on a new Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Jeff Cadman. The report before council is the official appointment of Mr. Cadman as the Chief Financial Officer for the municipality, and is responsible for as the authorized collector, and will be responsible for all aspects of the financial well-being of the municipality. So we're looking for a couple of resolutions from council to appoint Mr. Cadman in that role.
Thank you. Any questions from council? It's pretty straightforward. There are 4 recommended motions, and they should be moved separately.
I've got this.
Councillor Hoare?
Because I know how much Mr. Lawrence is going to be glad to pass over some of those things. I will move that council rescind the appointment of Dwayne Lawrence as the District of Ucluelet Finance Officer effective March 12th, 2024.
I'll second.
Councillor Mafty seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor? None opposed. That carries.
I will move that council appoint Jeffrey Cadman as District of Ucluelet authorized signatory effective March 12th, 2024.
I'll second that.
Councillor Anderson seconds. Further discussion? All in favor? None opposed. That carries.
I will move that council appoint Jeffrey Cadman as the District of Ucluelet Finance Officer in accordance with Section 149 of the Community Charter and the District of Ucluelet Officers and Officials Bylaw number 1315 effective March 12th, 2024.
I'll second.
Councillor Mafty seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor? None opposed. That carries.
And I will move that council appoint the Director of Finance as the authorized collector.
I'll second.
Councillor Mafty seconds. Further discussion? All in favor? None opposed. That carries.
Welcome, Jeffrey.
Good work, Dwayne. Welcome, Jeffrey.
Excellent. Are there any notices of motion? Okay, we have 2 correspondence items this evening. Both are from Seaview Seniors Housing Society. And we should probably discuss both of them a little bit and then possibly refer to staff. So the first one is from Patricia Sieber, Chair of the Seaview Seniors Housing Society, and it's regarding the BC Seniors Advocate and her speech at the seniors lunch not too long ago, and she had suggested that communities need a person whose job it is to be like a coordinator of senior services. Someone who knows what is available, who can direct seniors to those who supply the service, and who can liaise with the service providers. And apparently such a thing did exist prior to COVID as part of the West Coast Community Resources Hub. And she's suggesting that that we look into how to continue to provide that service since it was put aside during COVID and has not come back. So possibly a motion to refer this to staff.
I think that's a great idea.
Okay, you want to make that motion?
I will move that we refer the recreation of the position of seniors advocate back to staff.
I don't think
Something?
that's quite the intent.
I don't know. I need words. Today I don't have them. It's
You have a motion now. Is there a seconder or no?
no, let's let it die.
What I would recommend is that we refer the letter back to staff.
There we go. Okay. Sorry. Today is one of those days. I will move that we refer the letter back to staff.
And I'll second that.
Councillor Anderson seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor? None opposed, and that carries. And the second one is to extend the grant and aid deadline. And I believe this is referring to the reporting out of the grant and aid deadline. And again, we can refer this to Ms. Fortune to work with them on that. I don't think we need a motion, do we? No. Okay, perfect. And there are 2 information items. AVICC's 75th AGM and Convention. Mr. Lawrence, do we know if we have any photographs that we can share with them?
Likely. I have not looked.
Okay. And a request for a greeting letter to Shen Yun Performing Arts on their Canada Tour 2024. And I see that they're asking that it be received by March 4th, which we are past. So probably we're too late for their marketing package, I'm guessing. Mayor's announcements and council committee reports. I can give a little bit of background on the transportation, the West Coast Transit that is starting up, because I've attended 2 presentations on it. It is starting up April 2nd. It's going to be called the West Coast Transit Service. There's a 2-year contract with the possibility of a 1-year extension. It'll be 3 buses, all the same. They're 18-seaters. They're called RBOC, A-R-B-O-C, and do have room for a wheelchair. They're going to do 7 trips Monday through Friday, round trips, and 4 round trips Saturday and Sunday. There will be 33 stops altogether, 5 here in Ucluelet, 20 in Tofino, 1 at Taiastanis, 1 at Esowista, 3 in Itatsu, 1 at the Pacific Rim Visitor Center at the Junction, and 2 within Pacific Rim National Park. They're just confirming pricing for a single use, a day pass, a monthly, and an annual. The monthly and annual would have a 40% discount to encourage those. And I just got word today that because at our last meeting we suggested that students should not have to pay, and they have just met with the Clayoquot Biosphere Trust and have determined that students over 12 will get to ride free with their student ID, and those under 12 ride free anyway because of a provincial program that has been in place for the past year or so. So that was really good news, and the CBT are now looking at working to see what grants might be available to support transit for seniors as well, so they don't have to pay either. So I just thought I'd bring some of that information forward for you, since Eddie couldn't be there today as our delegation. And council committee reports. Councillor Anderson.
Right. I had some notes that I took at the seniors advocacy meeting with Isabel McKenzie that Patricia put on. That was a great luncheon. That was pretty eye-opening, actually, to see the difference between she being a seniors advocate in BC, to see the difference between the access to services and funding for seniors living in major cities compared to rural areas in BC, and the difference in the size of this, how vast it is, and how people end up in in these rural areas because they're sort of the backbone of a lot of these industries. So they're there for a reason. I thought that was well, and there was definitely an imbalance between what people are getting in these city situations as opposed to the rural spots. But it also did speak to how resilient people tend to be, like when they live in these rural situations and they can't get to a hospital and things like that, and they have to care for themselves. But we definitely have to make some changes there. So I was glad to be part of that. And then we're going to be speaking to Island Health directly about this. When's that? In April 12th, right? So that was good timing for that, so we can talk directly about that. And then the only other thing that I went to was where is it here? Make sure I get it. Is the Pacific Rim Region Coastal Safety Coordination meeting, which I guess was really about lifeguards at the end of the day, and that was a pretty powerful meeting. I found it wasn't. You and I talked about this the other day. It wasn't. You read the title, it sounds like it's this coastal safety meeting, and it was. But we had, and I'm sure you're going to talk about this too. We had Gord Johns there at our table. Marilyn was there. Dan Law was sitting next to us. Bill Fend was at our table, and then it was really like everyone who should be at a meeting talking about this stuff, and it was definitely surf heavy. So basically there's so many small parts here that were really important to go over as a group, and to have that meeting and the people that were at that meeting was amazing, because I just don't think it has happened. It hasn't happened in years, and to find out that the other two people that were sitting at our table were from the Coast Guard, and one of them is Tom Steer, who's the counselor for Tofino, and Chewy that lives in town, Jason. And it was interesting to find out that so we have like Parks Canada, for example, at Long Beach or any of the Canadian parks, they're responsible up to the surf zones, so basically knee-deep water, and the Coast Guard is responsible for anything past the surf zone. But there's that area where anything that goes wrong happens in that area, and there's basically no one responsible for that. And that was pretty mind-blowing to see that situation. And I didn't realize that the lifeguard station at Long Beach was there for 36 years, is that right? And was taken out in 2012. And I mean, like, if you look at the people that have passed away on these beaches here, there's been a couple here and there, but by and large, it's in front of Lufkin Rock. And I mean, statistically, if you look at what's happened over the last 10 years, we're going to see another death there. And that's basically what Gord Johns put, and Dan and yourself, to the federal government, and just said, hey, look, this is going to happen, and we need to make that change. And then the bigger picture is we want to have and Shandy got up and spoke. She was great at outlining that the whole coast here needs to have a program, and it has to involve kids in schools, and it has to involve training in pools, and it has to involve like the surf instructors, and it's there's a whole bunch of parts to it. But I think Gord Johns had a good speech when he said the low-hanging fruit is where people are dying, which is this one spot. And so hopefully it looks like we've got some wheels in motion for making a motion at some point here between the two districts, one in Tofino or Tofino and then us, and with the help of Gord. So hopefully that moves forward, and we'll do what we can to make that happen. And that's it for me.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson, and I will speak to it a little bit too when it's my turn. But good summary. Cool. Councillor Hoare?
I don't have anything to report, but on a lighter note, I would like to point out that today is a special day. So, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Mayor McEwen. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you. I hope all the folks at home on Zoom sang along.
It's a good thing I was at karaoke practicing singing last week.
Thank you so much. So no reports from you? Okay. Councillor Kennington?
I was also at the Seniors Advocacy Luncheon, which was extremely interesting for all the reasons Sean stated. I always latch on to the housing component of these things, and also being on the accessibility committee, how much we've been advocating for seniors and integrating that into the policy that we're working on. So it was kind of just gave a little bit of tailwind on those initiatives for me.
the tour that she just finished of BC was her last before she retired March 1st. So we're hoping that there is someone replacing her. That's it for you, Councillor Kennington?
I believe so.
Okay. Councillor Mafty?
Nothing to report, but I just want to bring it to everyone's attention that the Rain Coast Education Society will be hosting, I was going to say their AGM, but I'll say our AGM tomorrow at 5:30 at our offices on Bay Street. And it's open to the public. Anyone who's interested, please come out. Specifically, anyone who would consider joining our membership. There are no requirements. There are no fees. It's as easy as just registering, and you'll have a chance to help us vote in officers on our board. So if anyone's free tomorrow at 5:30, there'll be snacks. Come on out. It's going to be great fun. It'll be short, I promise.
Unfortunately, I'll be on my way home from Port Alberni, so I can't attend.
I won't put any individual on the spot, but yeah, it'd be great to see folks out there.
Thank you. For myself, February 28th was a West Coast Committee meeting, and we reviewed some airport leases, and as part of the budget process, and also had a delegation from Watt Consulting, which is the company that's put that BC Transit a whole program together for us. And then I attended the seniors lunch at the community center here with Isabel McKenzie, which was really great. And she was gracious enough to take questions afterwards, which was even more enlightening. I mean, her presentation was amazing, but to have the question period from the audience was equally as informative. And then that afternoon was an ACRD board meeting where their draft financial plan was presented. February 29th, I attended a Zoom meeting with several mayors. We all met up at the LGLA conference at the end of January. Sort of an impromptu meeting. There were 12 of us, and so the idea is that we're going to meet regularly and on Zoom, so it's not just at conferences, but it's just great to hear what other challenges and successes mayors are having in other communities around the province. March 1st, I was at an iced tea meeting, which is Island Coast Economic Trust. And that's where we reviewed 4 projects, and 3 of those 4 were approved, one of which being at the previous Botanical Gardens, which is now owned by a consortium. And so their project was for Na Wayasam Art Gallery at the Pacific IPCA Innovation Center's Clayoquot campus is what that's currently referred to, but it was the previous Botanical Gardens. So that was one of the 3 projects approved at the ICT meeting. March 4th, I was at that Coastal Safety Prevention and Regional Coordination meeting, which is what they called it, and I had no idea that it was about reinstating the lifeguard program until we got partway into the meeting. And it took Gord Johns 12 years to get that meeting put together. So he's really been cheering for reinstating the surf guards at Long Beach, so no other lives have to be lost. And yes, so the CBT, Clayoquot Biosphere Trust, were the ones that put that meeting together. That it was a whole day meeting, and the park hired the facilitators for it. So yes, we are crafting a motion to go to the ministry to insist that the park bring back the surf guard program. So that's in the works. March 6th, I was at an ACRD Committee of the Whole meeting. There was more of the draft financial plan presented, and that's where they presented their grants in aid. March 7th, I was at the Resort community collaborative meeting, and that's the 14 mayors that are in resort municipalities. And we meet once a month on Zoom, or Teams, I think it is actually. And tomorrow there will be a meeting between the Ministry of Tourism staff and Whistler staff regarding the MRDT program and trying to loosen the wording around how those funds can be used, potentially to help with infrastructure for the 14 municipalities whose infrastructure is taxed very heavily by tourists. So that should be an interesting meeting tomorrow. I'm not attending; it's staff to staff, but we'll definitely report out how the results of that. And tomorrow I'm in Port Alberni for 2 ACRD meetings, one of which is that hospital request that Terry Fong alluded to, and so that'll be interesting day. Any questions for me and my many meetings?
Was that the hospital request? Is it or is it the new health center? Is this the hospital?
It's VHA that's presenting, and they're requesting up to 40%. They're actually requesting 40%, but it's up to 40% of the cost of our new medical clinic and the Tofino sobering center.
Right.
But it's at the 11th hour of both our budget.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we'll see what the decision tomorrow is on that one. All right, question period. This is an opportunity for the public to ask questions about matters within Council's jurisdiction. Representations about matters that have been the subject of a public hearing are not permitted at this time. Any questions from the audience? Yes, please. Up.
It's on? Oh,
It's on, I think, yeah.
Okay. I am Patricia Sieber. Do you need my address?
No.
1058 Helen Road. Okay.
No.
I'm speaking as a senior representative, basically. I just wanted to thank you for attending and for addressing some of our concerns. I was just going to ask if happy to hear that you're going to be meeting with VHA on April 12th. I guess one of the things I would like you to emphasize is that we need more services for sure. However, we need a way to make people know how to access the services that are already available, because we're finding that oftentimes there may be a service out there that the people who need it have no idea how they can access it. So there's a breakdown in communication, there's a breakdown in knowledge, and these are things we need addressed. So that's probably why we need some kind of coordination between all the agencies that provide services and those and even nonprofits such as ours who can help in the process. So when you're meeting with them, I hope you sort of make that point too.
We will for sure. Thank you.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
So was there a person before at West Coast Resource Society that did this previously?
Oh, well, actually, the funding for the position was through New Horizons grant, and it was Zoe, but I forget her last name. But she worked under a grant out of the West Coast Community Resources, but then the funding did not continue on. That's part of the problem with grants, is that you can do something on a short-term basis, but you can't depend upon it always being there.
Well, thank you.
Anything else?
That's great. Thank you. Yes.
Hi, Andy Harridge. I just came here today actually to try and get some answers about the affordable housing project, the First Light affordable housing project. And Bruce called me back yesterday and gave me some info there. And I actually got a call back from BC Housing themselves today on my way here. So I was a little bit late, so I'm not sure if anything was addressed before I got here, but he actually mentioned to me that he had the papers drafted by the lawyers and sent out to you guys today. So
close.
kind of just hoping that you guys were going to pass something through today, because that's what he mentioned. He's like, it's going to be in front of council, they'll pass it through, and something will happen immediately. Do you know more about this, Bruce? Is it?
It's not on
better?
today. It's not in today's council package, but we're expecting it imminently, and when that happens, we can call a special council meeting to address that particular topic. But it won't be. It's not in this package. We still don't have
Yeah.
it.
Okay.
Are you one of the 22 that are wanting to buy in?
Yes, yeah.
Excellent.
It was
Good.
Waiting and waiting and waiting, and it was getting
Yeah, I know.
because we're getting conflicting reports from the developer and real estate agents and everyone. So I got a lot more clarity right before I got here, so I was kind of more informed than I expected to be before I got here. But I was just hoping to see. I guess I'll let you speak. You probably know more as of today. Okay.
Yeah, we had a Teams meeting today with Andrew and the rest of us, and as well as BC Housing. It was great to have everybody talking at the same time about the same thing for a change.
Okay. On a separate note too, sorry, before you go, you need the mic. The motion that you guys were gonna do with Tofino about, I was at the meeting as well, the surf guard scenario.
Right. Can you speak into the mic?
Oh, sorry, I'm so short. My bad. I was just I just was hoping to maybe speak to you guys after about the motion you're going to do, because I left that meeting and immediately called Marcy DeWitt, and she called her friend who is running Coast Guard, or Coast Smart, sorry, that program that was talked about in there, but didn't seem like anyone actually represented during the meeting, which was very odd. So I got some progress in that world, and I didn't know what motion you guys were doing, so it'd be kind of good to collaborate a little bit on that at a different time, I guess.
Yeah, the CoSmart program is different from the SurfGuard program.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I have some info and intel in that world, and so I was just curious about your motion that you guys were putting together, and that's obviously a separate thing. So that was 2 questions. Sorry, I lied.
That's okay. Mr. Gregg?
It's one size fits all here. Through the mayor, just a brief update. Yes, we had a meeting with BC Housing, the mayor and Mr. Lawrenson, BC Housing and the developer today, and subsequently, just at 3:00, we got a letter from the developer providing some additional clarity and some information, and at 3:30, I have an email with an updated agreement from the lawyers for BC Housing. I haven't had a chance to even read it, but what I think we're going to see is depending on schedules, perhaps a special council meeting being scheduled to consider that, because it was on council's desk in December with here's the draft agreement, which was consistent to what we had put forward back in July, and so there are some changes they're proposing, and so we need to bring that back to council for authorization before we can enter into that agreement. I think that's what's been sort of waiting for. But as of 3:30 this afternoon, we have the actual updated, I believe, agreement from BC Housing. But as I said, I haven't had a chance to read it yet.
But your application is not in danger. There's no change that is going to endanger the 22 applications, right?
That is absolutely the intent. I think everyone we've been working, I think since 2019 with the rezoning, trying to support and see this application, this whole development move forward to get housing for Euclid residents, and we've been essentially trying to advocate for let's get this in place. We'd hoped this agreement would have been in place back in June, but there've been some delays, and as I said, they finally provided the agreement today. So the reason for the special council meeting is the council meetings happen every 2 weeks. The developer would like to move forward much more rapidly than that because of all the hang-ups and what we've been waiting for. So it means scheduling another meeting just for this item. So we need to give 24 hours notice for that, but then it could be on a council agenda once we've had a chance to even read it and make sure it is right.
Thanks for your question. Anyone else from the audience that wishes to speak? No. Mr. Rotenberg, are there any questions by Zoom or telephone?
If you have a question for council, please click the raise hand icon if you're on Zoom, or *9 if you're calling in. No hands raised at this time.
And have we received any questions by email to communityinput@ucluelet.ca?
It looks like we actually have a question in by way of Zoom.
Okay.
Okay, Ms. Gray, I will unmute you now.
Hi, Judy.
Hey guys. Just a quick comment is all on the First Light project. Dealing from this end with all these buyers has been an extremely frustrating and heart-rendering process because these folks just want a home. The fact that the mention of that it's been since 2019 that this has been undergoing, and then now it's 2024. It's just, do we need to look at our system and the process, because this seems to be broken to me. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Judy. It was just nice to have all three parties in a meeting today for the first time. So I think it's been resolved.
Emails, right? We do not have any emails to communityinput@ucluelet.ca. There are questions at this time.
Okay, thank you. And just looking to Mr. Lawrence, if we are having an in-camera session? No. Okay. So may I have a motion to adjourn the March 12th, 2024 regular council meeting at 6:12?
So moved.
Councillor Anderson?
Second.
Councillor Kennington? All in favor? None opposed? That carries. Great.
Councillor Anderson, how much babysitter time do you have? You got time for a burger?
I don't. Ooh.
I'm meeting Jason at the
Aw,
Black Rock.
thank you.